Live. All right, we'll give it a moment, maybe 2 seconds. Now we are on now. So, hello and welcome everyone to the Streamlit show. My name is Tony Kipkemboy, and I am a developer advocate for Streamlit at Snowflake. And today I'm super excited to be joined by Craig Peters, who is a staff product manager, sorry, at GitHub. And so, welcome, Craig. It's a real privilege to have you here with us today.
I'm so glad to be here with you, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And but we have a really interesting topic ahead of us. We'll be talking about GitHub Codespaces, and it will be a very interesting topic to talk about because I think a lot of people maybe might not even be familiar with. So it's going to be very interesting. And before we even get started talking about GitHub Codespaces, let's talk a bit about your background. And first of all, you've you have a very remarkable journey in technology that is truly inspiring, especially to me as a just kind of somebody getting into technology, seeing how you've navigated the scene, and most of your career, what I've noticed as well, is marked by substantial leadership roles, which include pivotal positions at places like Microsoft and many other great companies. It's a long list to name at this point, but beyond your current role at GitHub as well, you contribute to your expertise as a board member at NetApp, which is a startup, as I understand, and currently it's not
They're big
but
storage company.
big storage company. Thank you for
Yeah,
the clarification. Thank you about that. And currently, you're a staff product manager at GitHub, where you've been instrumental at democratizing Codespaces, GitHub Codespaces to be specific, and bringing this powerful tool to a wider audience. And so, with that little bit that I've kind of shared there for your background, could you share a bit more about yourself and maybe some things that might not even be in your resume, not in your LinkedIn or Twitter or anywhere really, that you think has shaped your journey or approach to technology and leadership?
sure. Like a few things that aren't really reflected there that are really important to me are that when I was in university, I worked in lots of different kinds of jobs. And one of the most influential was actually as an assistant teacher in a local school district here in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Nice.
The program is paid for by the U.S. government, targeting adding more resources to classrooms where students needed more help. The school district couldn't afford to hire enough teachers
Yeah.
to keep classes down below like 30 students. And so I was in classrooms with 30 to 35 students and one teacher, and more than half of the students were English as a second language
Wow.
learners. And so it was really hard to teach math in an environment where the students were, struggling at home or brand new uh, migrants to the United States.
Yeah.
And so I got the privilege to spend one-on-one or small group time with a lot of these kids, just getting to understand what it was that made them not pay attention in class and help them sort of figure out what it was the teacher was trying to accomplish and what they were trying to learn, and help them get over small hurdles. And that understanding that a small amount of attention and focusing on small goals can
Yes.
help people make a ton of progress was super influential in my career.
Wow. That's amazing. It's one thing that I usually always appreciate is teachers. I usually, just sometimes joke with my wife or people that I meet. I couldn't be a teacher. It takes a lot of patience and just understanding as well. So you have to have a really big heart to be able to commit to that career. And it's great to see how it's kind of impacted your journey so far. You as a person as well.
Well, my sister is a lifetime third grade teacher, and so
Wow.
I have the utmost respect for her and what she does for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because my father is also a teacher, so it's kind of in our family.
Family thing. Oh, that's really good. Thank you for what they do as well, for sure. So, uh, for you, just to cover that section as well, how did you end up at GitHub, and why GitHub Codespaces is kind of like your core specialization?
It's kind of pure chance. So I had been at Microsoft for a while working on Kubernetes
Yeah.
and how Kubernetes runs on Azure. The team that I was a part of was responsible for making sure that Kubernetes ran on Azure, and that all the Microsoft distributions of Kubernetes were supported and were contributing innovations and improvements back upstream into the open source community, and doing that as a partner in the open source environment. And that was a fantastic role.
Yeah.
I'd left to go work on a startup that was super exciting to me in the SRE space. And for various reasons, that wasn't a great fit in the end. And I was interested in coming back into Microsoft because I never thought I would have said this, but like, because 15 years ago, if you asked me if I would ever work for Microsoft, I would have said bleep no. And but things have changed,
Yeah.
and I ended up there and loving the culture and the way everything that the way the company works is very human. It's about people.
Yeah.
And so I was interested in going back, but I'd always admired what was going on at GitHub. And so I looked at GitHub, and I got really lucky that they needed someone like me who has DevOps experience, sort of
Yeah.
deep expertise in that kind of culture, a strong product background, and an interest in how developers work to get involved in GitHub Codespaces. And so the first thing that I got to do a fantastic thing. I thank Nick, my former manager, for helping task me with this, but to get free use of GitHub Codespaces, these cloud-based development tools
Yeah.
that we're going to look at, free usage of that into every developer's hands. And that's like my big accomplishment so far at GitHub, was to be able to launch that at Universe 2 universes ago.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you on today because we get to learn about all this cool stuff for sure. So before
That's
we even get to the nitty gritty of this, and we have some demos as well lined up for folks that are listening and or seeing us today. And before we get to that, I just want to remind the audience that if you have any questions throughout this entire show, please use your chat, put your questions there for me or Craig here, and we'll be able to answer those questions towards the end of the show as well. So as we kind of get into the demos here, I'll do one demo. You'll also show us some few really interesting stuff. And before we get to that, maybe somebody is in the audience right now thinking, well, I know what GitHub is, but what is GitHub Codespaces? I've never heard of it. How would you explain that to somebody that's kind of new to this?
for sure. So Codespaces is on-demand, cloud-based development environments that integrated an IDE. So the integrated development environment. And so the default IDE for GitHub Codespaces is Visual Studio Code, which many people are already using for lots of different kinds of coding and learning. And so what it means is that you can, with 0 local resources, all you have to do is have some sort of computer that has a keyboard
Yes.
and a network connection. And then you can get to a GitHub account. I apologize. You also need a GitHub account.
Yeah.
And from there, you can get a virtual machine running an environment that allows you to run VS Code in the web, or using your local machine's VS Code, you can connect remotely to that. So you can make it even feel like it's right on your local machine. And it does it in a way, we'll demo it, that it's very natural. From looking at the code, you can get right to working in the code and testing things out and making your contributions back to the code. And it's a great way to learn and a great way to work.
Nice. Awesome. So technically you can run this on your phone, on your tablet, just literally where you have connection and a browser and a keyboard, like you said.
Yeah, not too many phones have enough keyboard to make
Yeah.
it terribly useful. And we do have plans in the future to have better workflows around phone-based use, but
Yeah.
I use it on my iPad all the time.
Nice. That's awesome. So I can imagine people on a commute, maybe on a train back home or to work, just kind of sit there and start even coding while you're there. So that's very interesting, and we'll get to see some of this demos right now. So the first demo, I'll be the one running it. So I'll share my screen here shortly, and let me fire that up. Cool. So this is the demo that we'll start with, and the demo that I'll be showing here is just how to set up a Streamlit app straight from GitHub Codespaces using GitHub Codespaces. And the first place where you want to go is go on share.streamlit.io as your way you usually go build your application and then deploy it from Streamlit. And what you want to do, you want to come to the new app. If you click that menu button right there, you'll be able to see that you have options and you can use existing repo. But in this case, we'll use create new app with GitHub Codespaces. So once you click that, it will give you basically a section where you fill in, and you're familiar with this, you deployed a Streamlit app before. And the first one you want to name, you're going to give a name to your GitHub repository here, and because it will generate this in the back. So for this case, I'll just give it as live stream, since we are live streaming right now. And the name of the app, I'll call it live stream, and let's see if that's available. That is available. So we livestream.streamlit.app, and I'll create that. And this will take a few moments to kind of spin this up. And while that is spinning, it will go ahead and once it's done spinning, it will show like a development container where it's showing the processes happening in the backend, which Craig will talk about this in detail after I'm done with this demo to tell us kind of like intricacies of what's happening in the background of this. And once this is done spinning, it will show us an example app, which is a template app that you can see running straight on the browser. And let's give it a moment. And if you click here as well, you can see the logs. You can see what's happening. It's more of just kind of telling you, hey, this is done, this is complete, this is what's happening. And we'll cover this as well in much detail. And if you have a requirements file as well, which you should have in your Streamlit app, which contains all the modules that your app is depending on, it will be doing that installation here and creating everything here. So just give it a few moments.
Yeah, for anyone who's familiar with, say, Docker containers, what you might recognize what this log kind of looks like. It's actually starting up a Docker container with all of the configurations to run Streamlit in an environment that it's going to make for you. So you didn't have to install anything on your machine, did you?
Nope. Yes, all this is happening in the browser. So in browser editor. And if you're very familiar with GitHub with VS Code, this will feel very natural, and you'll feel like you're at home basically. So now it's done, and you can see here we have all our files, and this is just kind of the template app that we have, and it will spin up in a moment here. It will spin up the Streamlit app, and it will also open the app in the preview window here in a second. Just give it a minute. And there it is. It's loading up. And boom, it's done. So you can see this is the app that all this code is for this app, and it spun this up all in the browser. We didn't do anything on my local machine at all. And you can see the app, you can access the app, you can see all the cool stuff within the app. So let's say you want to change something on this app, right? For example, let's change the welcome Streamlit, hello, welcome to Streamlit. The hand signal, let's change it to balloon, because we're at Streamlit, we love balloons and we love our emojis a lot. So let's click save. And as always, you'll see this telling you, hey, always rerun. And if you hit always rerun, you'll see like it does populate that directly on your application. It shows the changes that's been reflected there directly. So if you edit something here and click save, it will reflect on your application directly. And as you can see, this is just the preview, because you can see the URL here is still app.github.dev at the end. And so this is a preview. But if we go to our application that we gave the name already as livestream.streamlit.app. If we go to that Streamlit link, we should be able to see that application as well, the same application already deployed. And you can see there, our app is live and you can share it with folks. Now, you're probably thinking, hey, that's cool. And that's just a template app. I want to customize this to be my app, an app that I want to play with. So in this case, I have some code here, a boilerplate template code that I was working with. And maybe this is your code and you just want to put it in this template app and make it your app. So in this case, what I'll do, just go ahead and delete some of the code that you think you want to use in this case. So which is the utils and also the pages. We don't need that because I just want my new application. And you can leave the hello app.py and just delete the contents of it. So if we look at the app now in the in-browser, you can see that it's empty now because, we've deleted all the code, so we don't have the code anymore. So let's go ahead and copy the code and assume this is your code that you're interested in and paste it in this hello app and click save. And boom, you can see that our new app, your app now that you want, has already been reflected within that preview. And one thing to note is that if you go to the main application, the livestream.streamlit app, it's still the same because what we have not done is we have not committed these changes that we've implemented in the application, in the code, to GitHub, so that way it reflects on the Streamlit app. So in this case, and if you're trying to understand what this app is doing, I basically just went on our Streamlit live stream page on YouTube and grabbed all the video IDs, and all I'm doing is just showing all the video IDs for all the videos that we've done so far on our live streams. And this is just my app, a simple app for demonstration purposes. So the next thing you want to do is, of course, you want this app to replace the other app and become your new app. So what you want to do is commit all your changes that you've done, and I can add a simple message, change app, and commit the changes. And I want to sync that. And now we give it a moment. And this application is going to start loading. And you can see it's already processing. It's grabbing all the changes. And this is the logs on the Streamlit app. And you can see it's bringing in all the new changes. And now let's refresh the app. And you can see the app is now updated. We have a new application. It's changed. It's all new, brand new, the way you want it. And you can share now with folks and access the app from anywhere, and other people can access the app as well. So that's a quick demonstration of how you can implement that. And now I'll pass it over to Craig to talk about the intricacies, what's happening actually under the hood when we're implementing all these changes, what's actually happening under the hood. So back to you, Craig.
Well, I think that's a super cool demo. So just if I understand correctly, what you did was you showed a Streamlit website wherein you had the ability to manage your applications that are running in Streamlit Cloud, right?
Yes.
And Streamlit has then gone and created an application that will create a new GitHub repo using your user identity and inject the right sets of codes so that you can then publish that application into Streamlit Cloud without having to do any magic of your own.
Yes. It does feel like
That's
magic.
super cool.
Yeah, it does feel like magic. Yes.
It does. I mean, I don't know if you did it before this integration with Codespaces, but what I remember having done it before is that I had to go fork a repo, and then I had to copy and paste some code into my repository.
Yes.
Then I had to push it to the cloud, and then I had to see if what I did was right. Right.
Yes.
Like so if something wasn't right, then I had to go back into my code, make the change, push it into the cloud, and then test it there again.
Yes.
Well, what Codespaces lets you do is, because we're actually running the Streamlit server in the Codespace and forwarding that port, you're then able to view it running within your own development environment before you end up pushing it to Streamlit Cloud, which is super cool. So you can test all kinds of crazy things and make all kinds of mistakes without that getting exposed to the world.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
very cool.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the fun part. That all this is happening just within the browser. You're not doing anything on your local machine, which is really fun.
Yeah, it just makes the barrier to entry really low for trying new things. Right. I mean, that's sort of what we're all about here, is in unlocking the creativity of all kinds of people. And so that's why I brought up, I think the way I wanted to show what Codespaces is at a level independent of Streamlit is by showing collections and how one can go and discover new things and just try them out easily with Codespaces. What Streamlit has done is wrap this experience that I'm about to show in a really nice package that makes it easy to use in the Streamlit Cloud.
Yes.
So independent of that, if you go to GitHub, you log in with your account, there's this awesome, I don't know, it's not very highlighted actually on GitHub often, is collections. In this case, I'm going to go look at collections, and we're going to start from something new. And let's go take a look at, maybe I want to learn something about front-end JavaScript frameworks.
Yeah.
And I can go and find an app, I don't know anything about Solid. Let's go take a look at Solid.js. And one of the things that we did with Codespaces is we added, like, if you're used to going to the code button on GitHub, so if you don't have a GitHub account, go get one. They're free. It's the best way to go and get involved in open source and start learning things about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Once you've done that, then the normal way of working is to work on your local environment. So GitHub is a server that manages all of these great projects, all the files, all the versions, and then you copy them locally, you work on them, and then you push your changes from your local machine back up. That's the old workflow. And so that's under this local tab. What we did for Codespaces is we had this new tab under the code dropdown. And so now, instead of having to copy anything local, you notice this is a much cleaner, simpler screen than that local one. I have all kinds of options there. Here, I could just create a Codespace on me. So what this is going to do is it's going to do just like you did for that Streamlit app. It's spinning up a new environment for me. It's going to copy the code from GitHub into that new environment. So I have my own copy of it in the cloud.
Yeah.
And it's now I can go and look at the documentation or look at the, read the README and understand how to use it. I can understand everything about this application. I didn't need to download or install anything. I now have the power to actually run any of the code. I don't know this code base, so we're not going to spend all the time kind of digging through all the packages and trying to find something particularly good. But the nice thing is I've got the browser editor here. I could just go and run this directly from here and test it. And I think, as you mentioned in starting up your Streamlit app, it detected that you had a requirements.txt file in the repository in your example, and it automatically installed all that. Well, you can see here in this environment, we detected that there was some node configurations. And so we're running looks like node install had some issues. I'm not exactly sure what the challenge was. But most open source projects work pretty much out of the box.
Yeah.
Are there any questions about that? Looks like somebody's asking for the URLs. So it's interesting. I so far the only URL that I did was of any interest was actually the github.com/collections URL for finding new projects to kind of explore. And then we went into a specific example and started a Codespace. And you'll notice once I have a Codespace, it sees that it's here, and I can manage it with this kind of drop down. So that's a great way to kind of explore and get to know new codes without worrying about what I'm bringing onto my local machine.
Yeah.
So you kind of wanted to get into the meat and potatoes of what that really means.
Yes.
So the cool thing that we're doing is GitHub has actually created an entire virtual machine for you, and then spun up a container in that virtual machine in which we are running whatever needs to run for this particular application. So for example, for your application, you are running, I have a very similar one running. I have that sample application, right, with the animation and all that good stuff running here. So this is running the Streamlit server, and you'll see here under the ports tab that the application itself is running, and it's bound to this process, the Streamlit server itself.
Yes.
And I can actually open that application in a separate tab from there, right? So I can run my plotting demo or whatever here instead of doing it in the simple browser within the web development environment.
Yeah.
And if I made some changes, I can also do really nice things with this. I can, if I hold down Command and click on this thing, what am I doing? Sorry, Control and click on this thing. I can change the port visibility. So in this case, all of our ports are forwarded. So Codespace is running a VM. It's running the server. That server gets exposed on an internet protocol port,
Yeah.
which we manage for you, and you can see the visibility is private. Well, if I made that public, then that URL that we just saw becomes available to anybody on the internet. I don't want to get DDoSed here live
Yeah.
online, so I am going to go ahead and make that private again.
Yeah.
But that's something that allows you to collaborate very effectively with your colleagues. You can make some change to the application, share that URL with your colleagues, and they can say, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
You can make changes and iterate very quickly on what that is.
Yeah, I think that's the power of it right there. Just being able to spin that up, share the links, and edit it. So collaboration is something that Diz really 100% supports, and I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, that collaboration is one of the most important things in how we're productive as humans, right?
Yes.
Like, I can do this demo all I want, but unless you ask me questions, I don't know what's interesting.
What's
right?
interesting? Yes, absolutely,
What's important to
absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
And because VS Code is tightly integrated with Git and Git, and we're authenticated to GitHub, this environment automatically gives me the right permissions back to my repository.
Yeah.
So here I can see what changes I made, and I can do things like, push those changes up to GitHub and commit those, right? So I could say small change, and now that change, next time I go to my repository, well, I've committed it, but I need to sync it.
Yeah.
So now that change is reflected in my GitHub repo for this sample, and that collaboration then can continue.
Yeah.
Collaboration with myself or collaboration with anybody else who I have as a collaborator on that GitHub repository.
On the team. Yeah. And just kind of preface this as well, was this kind of like the entire GitHub Codespaces? Was it more of I guess the origins of it as well? I think this is kind of trying to tie it in. Was it something that a lot of people were requesting to begin with, or what was kind of like the use cases that led to this?
Well, the use case that led to this is the need for people to be able to work on lots of different things without having to update their machine as all of those different things change.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way that began was Visual Studio Code created this thing called the dev container specification. So they created a thing that leveraged the power of Docker containers.
Yes.
So Docker containers allow you to sort of package up all the things that you need to do something in a small package and then run that anywhere. It's based on, primarily on Linux.
Yeah.
But that way you only bring the little bits that need to sit on top of the Linux kernel for your particular application.
Yeah.
The thing that Docker didn't do is specify what kind of IDE configurations you need, what personalization you might want to bring, how I make that environment mine.
Okay.
And so dev containers layer on top of the Docker specification. Which packages do I need to install? What shared libraries? What compilers and tools do I need? But then also what debuggers, CLIs, what personalization do I need? What productivity tools do I need? And what source code do I require to do that work, right? So that extends what you normally put in a Docker file.
Yeah.
And then you can use that. We call this the inner loop, where the developer is kind of making a change to code, rebuilding, running that code, seeing if that change does what they really meant to do, and then testing it again, like all that sort of inner loop debugging. We refer to outer loop as the automated tools that allow you to do integration testing, long-term performance testing, those kinds of things that your DevOps tools do. Like GitHub Actions is and the workflows are a clear fit there. There are lots of other tools in that space.
Yep.
And dev containers allow you to have that sort of that same specification across your inner and your outer loop. And because you can use the Docker file, the dev container can reference the Docker file, you can also use that same Docker file in your runtime, where you don't need all your operating system utilities, debuggers,
Yeah.
CLIs, and such. You don't; those would be a security liability in production.
Yeah. So that's very good. And also, in terms of just kind of the dev container JSON file, that's something that also developers can just configure to their liking, basically.
Exactly. So you'll notice in this. So I'm going back to that random application that I picked.
Yeah.
I picked this solid one, right? It doesn't have a .dev container folder in it.
Yeah.
And so this one is unconfigured. So it has our default experience. Our default experience has a bunch of different tools installed, and which is why it works for lots of different open source projects. But if what you want to do is tailor an experience that's specific for a given development process,
Yes.
we can look at an example like a tool that anybody who's tuned into this is probably interested in numerical analysis.
Yeah.
And, the de facto standard for all of that is NumPy. And the NumPy community has added a dev container configuration to their repository so that anybody who wants to contribute to NumPy can simply go and click code and start a code space. I happen to already have a code space configured here. One of the awesome things that Codespaces does that we're seeing here is that we're running VMs on the background. We can't afford to have those VMs running 24 hours a day,
Yes.
7 days a week if you're not using them. So what we do is we have an idle timeout. The default idle timeout is 30 minutes. So if you're not active in a code space, what we'll do is we'll save all your work for you and take the VM away. And what happens is when you go back to that code spaces, we start up a new VM for you and we load all your work back into it. So
Nice.
this remembers anything that I was doing in NumPy before and brings it back up. So now you can see from my Git status that I didn't have any changes to any of the repositories yet. But if I had, all of my stashed changes or anything I had done on the disk would be available to me again.
Nice.
And so that allows me to work when I want, where I want, how I want.
Yeah. I can think of it as, I'm working on my laptop, maybe building some really cool world revolutionary application, and I decide to go on a trip or go somewhere and I find some time, I'm on my phone, I can just kind of load up on my phone the same container and just kind of continue building if an idea pops up in my head while I'm traveling or doing something.
Absolutely. And then you could just do it.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about this configuration is it could be very simple. Like, for example, the NumPy configuration, one of the tricks they use is they use our universal dev container image. So the dev container community, which consists of a bunch of different companies and projects that contribute to that open source spec that I showed a minute ago, this one.
Yeah.
Oops, wrong window. Maintains a set of base images. And this universal one is that one that I was talking about that has lots of different tools. The cool thing about this one is that we build that automatically into every virtual machine that Codespaces has.
Yeah.
And so starting up a new Codespaces environment using this default universal dev container image is super fast because it doesn't need to download anything from this. We have lots of other images that we maintain, including ones for Python, Go, Rust, Java, lots of different environments that have some specialized tools that don't fit in the universal. Universal gets very big because it tries to cover so many different things.
Yeah.
Each of those specialized ones have additional ones. What our customers really do, like, they don't want to necessarily take dependencies on the upstream open source community for dev containers. They want to be a very tight control. So this can actually be any container image that you maintain. So if you already have a container that has all of the dependencies you have, you can just specify it here. You can, if you have a Docker file that you already has all of those things, you can specify that in the Docker file object in this JSON file.
Yep.
And so that allows you to build on top of that. And then here, it just does some nice things. It just, we'll look in a second at the setup shell, because that basically just sets up your Conda environment.
Yes.
And then this just installs the Python VS Code extension, so that everybody who comes to this environment automatically has the tools in VS Code for Python.
Yeah.
And that makes it super easy and super fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really awesome because I'm thinking about when I started learning how to code and kind of navigating VS Code. I think this is something that, as a beginner, this is like really easy to get set up. You don't have to worry about, I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to understand those basics. But I think just kind of getting your feet and seeing something and getting that motivation to be able to start building, I think this is really cool because it handles all the complicated things in the back for you, and also being able to curate this for a specific purpose as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about the curation. Is, these kinds of things that we're looking at here, most people don't need to even think about this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you would start going into the code base and working in the code base if you're a contributor to NumPy, right? Like, I would be going and looking at the Python and figuring out, well, what does that do, and then testing it out in the command line and understanding how that works. There's a maintainer of the NumPy community who worries about how new people coming to this project, what their experience is, and they maintain this in the same way that Streamlit is maintaining a set of templates and this process of injecting the dev container configuration for you into your repository.
Yes.
When you create a Streamlit cloud thing, right? Like, that's the role of the maintainer. But it's not hidden from you. It's something that anybody can go and do that.
Yeah, get started. Absolutely. And for maybe people that are maybe working for organizations and maybe they're a bit concerned about just the security aspects of it, and also maybe there's some code base that they're working that needs like probably more private, more security to it. How does that change when using Codespaces?
Well, the Codespaces capabilities actually enhance your ability to manage the security of your code base by doing a few things. The first thing is that you can reduce the number of places that your code is copied to. Like, big enterprises who have very valuable code bases want to minimize the number of laptops that have their code that might get left behind in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And so if they're running on a VM in the cloud that is actually managed by that customer, then they have a lot more control over that. That's a really key thing. Another common kind of security hole in a lot of workflows is, where are the secrets? So typically, if a developer is working on their local machine and they need to access protected resources, they'll be connected to a VPN, but they still need the secrets locally in order to access that. Well, all of those things could be managed right within the repository. So if we go look at, let's go just look at my we'll look at another example here real quick. But here's a repository where I'm doing some work to incorporate a dev container into the Kubernetes repository. I've got some work to do to get this to land as a PR.
Nice.
But a really valuable thing is that you can manage secrets for Codespaces. So in this case, I am the owner of this repository. If I need a local secret, I could just say this is my database key, right? And then I would paste my string in there, and then it's made automatically available. The really valuable thing is you can actually do this at the org level. So an organization owner.
Okay.
So we're digging a little bit into GitHub capabilities.
Yes.
But an organization owner has access to secrets and variables. They can define Codespaces secrets, right? And then those are automatically then available to every repository in that organization, and you don't have to give that secret to the developers, right? Like, it's
Nice.
not a piece of information you have to manage, like, oh, I'm only going to give that to you on a USB
Yeah.
key or in an encrypted chat. GitHub manages the flow of that data. It's still available to you as a developer in that environment
Yes.
because you have to have that in order to do that. But it's not a piece of data you have to have sort of out of band manage
Yes.
separately.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I think that kind of takes away that entire concern there, and I like how kind of it's managed, and all you have to do as a developer, maybe within the organization, is just kind of build really in that case.
The other really important thing around that is that we mint the authentication tokens for GitHub freshly every time you start a Codespace session. And so those tokens are minted for that session, specifically for what repositories you need to have access to.
Okay.
And only those repositories. And so people don't accidentally spread things through their code bases. You have to be very intentional about escalating permissions, and there are policies that can control exactly how all that information gets set. And so we have policies and controls around how Codespaces works in organizations.
Awesome. Awesome. And just to kind of shift a bit as well, because maybe some folks now are thinking, all right, this is really cool and I want to get started with it. Where do I even go to get started? And do I need to pay something? Do I need to put in my credit card somewhere?
Well, that is the cool thing. So once you have a GitHub account, then you can go right into the Codespaces area and you can choose from our templates. We have a wide variety of templates for getting to know frameworks and Codespaces itself. And you can just create one. The billing for that is, you don't have to enter a credit card. It's the number one answer to that.
Yes.
We provide up to 60 hours free for every user every month. So once you've used that up, if you don't want to give us any money, that's fine. Just wait until the next month, and then
Yeah.
you can start using it again.
Yes.
Or if you want to keep using it, give us a payment method, right? Give us a credit card or some way to bill you, and we'll charge you once you pass that 60 hours per month.
Nice. So that should be 60 high powered time that you need to allocate. That's 60 hours a month, and if you go over it, then you might have to pay for the extra compute there.
That's right.
Awesome. And yeah, I think that kind of answers most of the big question. I think as somebody just kind of looking at this from clear standpoint, I just want to get started. I've understood a bit about how it works. I just want to get started, and which kind of leads also to maybe something else that maybe from your observation that you've seen from developers or you've heard in terms of, are there any challenges that you see people reporting with using Codespaces at the moment, or are there any things that they really like that you've seen that a lot of people are gravitating towards?
So challenges first. So as you can see, it's kind of a Linux-based service for doing development that does things like port exposure.
Yeah.
Because it's not local, it doesn't do real well with UI-based development unless what you're doing is TypeScript or Node or something like that, where what you're building is fundamentally a web-based app.
Yeah.
So for a web-based app, it works beautifully. If you're building like a Windows app or Java Swing, it's a little bit more clunky. We do actually have a feature. So if I go to the dev containers available features for desktop, we actually do have this feature called Lightweight Desktop
Okay.
that essentially provides you a lightweight X Windows capability to run. It runs Fluxbox, right? And so if you're running a simple web a GUI, this works great for many of those. But it's not great for like mobile apps or things like that. Really great if you're running Linux apps that have servers and services that it needs to connect to.
Awesome. Thank you for that caveat. I think that's something that I personally wasn't even aware of. So that's really interesting.
The biggest hurdle is change of mindset. Like when I started using this, I'm like, okay, well, what do I download and install? Like, how
Yeah.
do I get this locally?
Yeah.
And that's not the way it works, right? Like,
Yes.
I log in and I click, in the code. In this code, let's see, I'll find in this. We can go to the desktop light. Actually, this is one of ours. So
Yeah.
I actually have I can go here and we have a dev container configured for our features repo, of course, and I can just go create Codespace, right? And so
Yeah.
that's how I get started working on it. Um, I think the other hurdle there is changing the way you collaborate and to take advantage of exposed ports and thinking of pushing to the code repo as the core of how I collaborate with my team, which if you're already in a Git workflow is natural. But
Yes.
there are a lot of people who aren't there yet, right?
Yes.
Like, and so one of the things that we want to do as a team is figure out how we can make those ways of working more natural.
Yes.
That it's not a big learning curve to learn how to do the Git push and Git pull
Yes.
for the other teams. And so we're working with the VS Code team to simplify some of those workflows.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really neat, and kind of pointing out just for somebody that's starting to maybe invest some time in learning Git and maybe just how to navigate around the terminal. I think that's very essential skills to be able to work effectively in this case. And you've mentioned the challenges, but is there something that maybe you've observed that, or a feature within GitHub Codespaces that maybe most folks are not even aware that is really cool, or maybe not a lot of people use, that you can share?
Sure. Um, I think features is actually sort of the secret sauce in a way. So I do see that there are a couple of questions coming around dependency management, and that's a key problem for folks who are doing software development, right? Like, how do I keep my machine up to date with whatever is happening,
Yeah.
and whether that's in the code base that I'm working on or the dependencies that it has. And so what we've done is we've made dev containers composable. There's within a dev container, you can create a features section, and within the features, you just declare what features you want and how you want those incorporated. So I could say I want Anaconda and I want the .NET CLI.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting mix. And maybe I want to take CUDA because I'm using GPUs in my environment.
Yeah.
Right. And what the dev container does is just pull in either latest, if I declare latest,
Yes.
or I specify a major, minor, or patch version. So I can pin to a specific version of those. That's step one. Step two, really interestingly, I think we're going to release it tomorrow. A little teaser here is GitHub Dependabot. GitHub Dependabot will start making PRs, if you ask it to, against your dev container configuration when there are new versions of features that you have dependencies on.
Nice.
And so we'll let you know. If you're already doing that for your Docker file, then you're great. Dev container features are going to be the next capability that's coming there. And so I think I must admit I can see the questions that Andrew's asking, and I want to get to one of them, which is you maintain your base image, or we maintain if you take a dependency on us, we update the versions in the base images. Our goal is to make sure that you always have the latest version of the whatever is the LTS or the main two versions of tools in our base images. And then you're responsible for maintaining the rest of your dev container configuration, whether you have your own Docker file that you're using or just the dependencies as features in the dev container file to update those. The cool thing about that is you do that in one place in the GitHub repo declaratively, and then everyone who uses that dev container, whether it's through Codespaces or I failed to mention, you can run dev containers locally using the VS Code extension for dev containers, or the CLI gets the benefit of those updates to it automatically without having to worry about that. They don't have to make any changes.
Awesome.
The other question that I got answered was, is Codespace usage calculated when it's actively being used, or is it sort of all the time? The way it works is we only check the usage while it's being actively used or up until the timeout, unless you manually suspend it. So we'll calculate the number of core hours that you've consumed during that period of time, plus the storage from the time you create it to the time it's ended, because we're saving your work through the whole time, and until you delete a code space, the storage is deducted from your free usage. Or if you've added a billing method, we'll bill you for that if you've gone beyond your free usage.
Your free usage. Okay, awesome. Yeah, awesome question there, Andrew. And I think he had another question as well. Maybe we've already answered this as well. So how does one sync or work with dependencies with Codespaces, moving from local to Codespaces back to local?
Yeah, I think I kind of hit on that with the fundamental thing is you add those dependencies into either your Docker file or as features into the dev container.
Yep.
And you make sure that you're referencing the right versions of those things in each of those places. And then everybody who uses that dev container automatically gets the correct versions of those things as declared in Docker file or dev container.
Awesome. And by the way, I love using Dependabot. I use it on my repository, so it always tells me when a new version comes out, or maybe there's a risk. So always love it. And yeah, so excited to see the new changes tomorrow for sure. That you know everybody heard it here first with the new changes. So we get a question from Dominic.
Dominic just tried to create a code space in a Jupyter Notebook style, but did not find how to do. Well, I can provide a quick link to the documentation for our beta support of Jupyter Notebooks. It's a feature that we really want to support fully, and will over time. But
cool. Yeah,
I'm just going to provide that link real quickly here.
All right. Cool.
Let's see, I'll put it in our private chat and you can add it here.
I can put it in there. Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, using Jupyter Notebooks and Codespaces is awesome because it saves your work between sessions. Fundamentally, that's the number one thing. Like, we'll spin up the Jupyter server for you, manage all of that stuff, and even in your preferences, you can set if you want Jupyter as your default IDE in your Codespaces settings.
So that's a very long link. So what I'll do as well, I'll put it in the chat for folks, so you'll be able to see it there.
Easier if you can just click on it.
Yeah. So I have it in the chat. So if you can see it, you can use it from there. But yeah, cool. Let's see. Yeah, if anybody still has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. We got a comment here from Sanja, and he says, Streamlit plus Docker is something I need to learn. Yeah, absolutely. I think Craig, he has a lot of, you have a lot of experience just kind of dealing with cloud and containers. So this is something that, and then we
well, the goal of that whole experience that we built is that you don't really need to know containers. Or really need to know cloud. Just go into GitHub, click create a code space, and start coding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you need to get into very detailed configuration, then you do need to dig in a little bit, but the dev container specification is pretty straightforward, and you shouldn't need to worry too much about the details of containers. Or if you have the need to use a bunch of the power of containers, you certainly can and take advantage of it.
Absolutely. This kind of abstracts all that away, so you don't have to worry about that too much. So as a final question here to you, Craig, what are the kind of, I know you've mentioned the Dependabot becoming like one of the future enhancements within Codespaces. What other things maybe that, to the extent that you can share, that that you see in the future coming up, or some of the things that you see that a lot of people are really requesting down the line?
Well, one of the things is to make it even faster. I mean, right now it's a whole lot faster than if you read a README, download all the files, debug the conflicts with what you already have on your local machine.
Yes.
But we want it to be even faster. And so we're investing in things that will speed up the experience.
Yeah.
Um, I mentioned sort of some teased maybe some mobile experiences might be interesting
Yes.
to some people. Right now, we're focused on a lot of features that sort of larger organizations that want to improve their developer experience inside their companies. As you can imagine, big companies who have a lot of security constraints, they have to lock their laptops down a lot, and so that creates a very bad developer experience.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity to help them create a really great developer experience so that all of us get to have even better products that we use. So we're focused on that during this current year.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. That's great. There's a lot of things to look forward to. I'm looking forward to it as well. And with that, this has been really another amazing show, and we are so honored to have you here today, Craig, to be able to share some of this really important development in browser development, really, that I think a lot of folks should be learning and using it to build faster and generate more value and content out there for the for the entire world, really. And with just kind of that, is there anything that you want to share? I'll give you this floor. Just kind of share any last minute things that maybe we might have missed.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and I'm just really excited to see that Streamlit Cloud is getting benefit out of working with Codespaces, and the users of Streamlit are going to be able to be more productive this way.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, and appreciate all the work you're doing there to make this possible. And also, thank you for joining us, and also to the listeners and our viewers, thank you for your great questions and showing up today. So, with that, be sure to join us next Tuesday. We have another episode coming up next Tuesday on the 30th with Elwin Chen, the CEO and co-founder of Canaries. And with that, see you next time, and happy streaming. Bye bye.
Thank you, Tony.